We talking rom-com, we talking action, we talking drama and movie classics. Whatever you want, yo, we have it. Cause we talking movies on the podcast. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. So I married a film critic. Hey honey, I just want to talk about the movie like casually. You don't have to bring up the cinematography. Honestly, let's just talk about like how the characters were fun. Married a film critic. So I married a film critic.
Welcome to So I Married a Film Critic. I'm your co-host Julia.
Hey everyone, and I'm Barry the Film Critic.
And tonight we decided to do Nightmare Alley from 2021.
Directed by Guillermo del Toro. No, that's not it at all.
Oh man, for once it wasn't me.
Wow, del Toro, who is that?
We are not cutting that out.
We're not?
No.
It's Guillermo del Toro.
There you go.
Oh God. How embarrassing.
I'm the one who always...
Who is Guillermo del Toro? Do I know a Guillermo del Toro? I don't think so.
I don't think so. But I'm the one always botching the names, so it's finally your turn.
I can't believe I did that. Guillermo del Toro.
All right, relax. Okay. Let it go.
I'm devastated. Totally starting this off on the wrong note.
All right, so we decided to watch this last night because it is your top pick for 2021.
Yeah.
And it is nominated, right?
It's nominated for Best Picture and a couple other Academy Awards, but mostly in the technical capacity. It wasn't nominated for any of the actors, not even the director, who I hear his name is Guillermo del Toro. There we go.
All right, there
Okay,
you go. You
feeling
redeemed
good.
yourself.
Feeling good.
Jeez. Ah, what a professional.
Yeah, I know. Wow, falling apart.
All right, so you saw this in theaters.
I did.
Twice?
No, just once.
Just once.
Yeah.
Okay. And you were raving about it. And
Stark raving mad, yes.
And you wanted me to see it. And I got to say, I was reluctant.
Yeah, well, I know the title is probably a problem, I think, for a lot of people. I think many people thought this was a horror film, and this is the director of Hellboy 1 and 2, The Shape of Water, Mimic, Kronos, Crimson Peak. Del Toro primarily makes monster movies, even Pan's Labyrinth, which is arguably his best film. He tends to make movies about man's inhumanity to man, and he tends to make movies where the monsters are the most sympathetic and lovable things, being, tortured and being persecuted by mankind. And this is not that. If anything, Nightmare Alley, I've said this before, one of the things I love about it, it's a film in which the monsters have human faces. Because there are monsters in this film, and there are monsters in a traditional sense, but really we're talking about... we don't need the metaphor of the monster being persecuted or being tortured, being abused. In this case, we're seeing people doing it to each other. And I don't want to go there, but I will say I think the timing for this movie is perfect. I do feel like this movie is a scream for empathy and understanding, and also a film that tells you don't turn a side eye to someone who is suffering, who is being tortured. Don't ever allow compassion to be the third or fourth most important thing in your life when you're dealing with strangers or dealing with people who are different. The movie takes place in a carnival. It's a society of outcasts. So right there you have the prototypical Del Toro character. But at the same time, many of the characters in this film, most of which are played by recognizable actors, they are monsters and they do monstrous things to each other.
Yeah, it's true. So... this 2.5 hour movie.
Oh man, you're really selling it.
It was
2 hours and 30 minutes, folks.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I enjoyed it, but I don't know.
Did you enjoy it?
I mean, it stayed with me, but it's so disturbing on multiple levels that I haven't been able to stop thinking about it.
Well, that's a good thing.
I mean, in this case, I don't know. Nightmare Alley is a good name for it, but let's get into it.
Okay.
So we open with Bradley Cooper and
dreamy Bradley Cooper, not so dreamy in this film.
No, really
not the Bradley Cooper of The Hangover.
That
Another reason why this movie didn't do well in theaters, folks.
So he's pulling a wrapped up dead body and dropping it into like
Doing a corpse drop. Yep.
under his house, lighting the whole thing on fire and walking away. You see that this house is in the middle of nowhere in a field, and you don't know who this dead person is, but you know that Bradley Cooper's character is
moving on,
starting over. He gets on a bus and he keeps having flashbacks of this corpse situation. We don't know if it was a murder or we don't really know.
It's vague enough. It's intriguing, but it's vague enough that we're moving forward like he is.
Right. And so he gets on a bus, and then the bus stops, and I think the foreshadowing of the bus driver saying, "This is the end of the line," is apropos.
Yeah. There's a lot of foreshadowing, especially in the first act. Yeah.
So he gets out and immediately is taken in by the lights of this carnival nearby. So that's where he meets everybody.
It makes me think, if anyone, I mean, somebody needs to do it at some point. If anyone's going to remake Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is one of my favorite novels, Del Toro should do it, because he captures the mystique, the allure, the beauty, the strange, exotic wonder of carnivals and carnies in general. As you know, it's been a couple of years since I've been to our local carnival, but they haven't had a carnival.
Fair.
Yeah, fair
County
carnival.
fair.
I love them, and I miss them. I miss going to them. The pandemic is the reason why I haven't gone in a while, but I love them so much. I love being, I love it being like a microcosm of that state. I love being in the midst of people and these different panels, and not just the acts, and of course the terrible food and the music.
Our food here is awesome at ours. People go just for the food.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm talking about the ones we've gone to where it's like,
oh, okay.
It's a chocolate covered fried Twinkie.
Oh yeah, okay.
It dare food.
But let's be real. Like, carnivals now are not like this in the 1930s.
Well, I mean, yeah, the 1930s. I mean, plus this movie takes place during the Great Depression, and
right before World War II.
And this is also during the dawn of cinema, and at this point, radio would have been the thing. Mm-hmm. So we're the idea of an attraction, of something that just, hey, step right up, check this out. This is a time when people go, oh, I want to see what that is. I'll step right up, despite what it may or may not be.
Right.
Roger Ebert, the late great Roger Ebert, he once wrote about seeing a freak show, a carnival geek show, as a kid. He actually saw someone bite the head off a chicken.
One of these. Oh,
and when he would mention this, whenever he would mention a horror film, he would talk about teen slasher films. He would say, this reminds me of when I was a kid and I used to watch a guy bite the head off a chicken at a carnival freak show fair. It's like, that's the kind of thing this movie's resorting to. And it's interesting, isn't it, that that's one of the first scenes in this film.
That's crazy that he actually saw that.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering how prevalent these things were. I mean, I don't know if this was... I know it was a popular attraction at some of these carnivals, but I don't know how many of these shows there were and how many of them had these geek shows.
Yeah, and I've been to enough carnivals. I remember going to one where you had individuals on stage, and and I was young. I don't know if the deformity they had was real or if it was, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do remember, I mean, to say the least, I do remember seeing shows that spoke to the exploitation, that sort of thing that this world is speaking of. Because, I mean, to be very clear about it, I romanticize carnivals not only because they connect me to my youth, because I just love them. I think they're fun. I do. I think there's enough variety to them, and I kind of like.
You never saw something crazy like
no, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, for me, a carnival is like it. For me, it's an extension of a community. This is like going into another world, because it is the sense of the transient nature of carnivals. That it's these strangers come to town. They put up this giant tent. They have all these different attractions and these exotic performers. And you're just going, who are these people? Is any of this real? Are we actually seeing something extraordinary, or are we just being grifted? And this movie is basically telling us it's a giant grift, or is it?
No, I think it's a giant grift. But the grift is for the audience. The tragedy is for those who are behind the scenes.
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
So Bradley Cooper walks in. Oh, his name's Stanton Carlisle.
Yep.
So Stan walks into this geek show. And Clem, played by...
Wonderful Willem Dafoe. Yep.
What is he like the owner of this whole thing?
He oversees the freak show. I don't. It seems like he's the head barker, or at least he's the head of.
I mean, he gives out the money.
It seems, yeah, he seems like he might be the guy who runs the whole thing. I think so, and I think, not to jump too far ahead, but I think at the end of the film it's even indicated that the guy owns the things that he does because Clem might have sold it to him. The
Right.
radio and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. It doesn't make that explicit.
I
But
think he's the guy in charge.
Probably.
So he's telling everyone, all right, step right up. There's this, you're going to see a geek. He calls it a geek.
Yeah, I've heard freak show, but yeah, geek show.
Yeah. And
I was like, is that where that comes from? Like, I've been called a geek many times in
oh my
like
gosh, if this
high school. Is that where that's from?
If this where the word comes from, I never want to use the word geek again because it's so disturbing.
You're
so
a geek, Barry. Oh God, really? Like, in this context, jeez.
it's a guy. He says, I've had doctors look at him. They don't. Is he a monster or a man? And they said, no, he's a real man, and he doesn't have to eat every day. He's kind of giving some characteristics of this freak human, and this guy is it's just so sad. He's completely in like tattered clothes, hair is just messy, beard, I mean, just disgusting.
Yep.
Looking and smelly, I'm sure. And so he throws a chicken into this pit, and he tells everyone, it's your lucky night. You're going to get to watch him eat this thing. And now everybody has to pay an extra quarter to see this amazing show. And then we watch this man. Now, I didn't watch it. I covered my eyes. But we watched this man bite the head off a chicken.
Well, I watched it because it's Del Toro. So, and the end credits tell us that no animals were harmed in making the film.
Oh,
so I
obviously.
assume it's either an animatronic chicken or a CGI chicken, which would be amazing if it was a CGI chicken. It looks real, and it was certainly disturbing. But I'm one of those people who grew up with Fangoria magazine, where I'm going like, how do they do that? So I watched closely, and though I got to say, to your point, it's incredibly disturbing. As I told you, I think it's one of, or if not the most disturbing scene of the film, and I like that they front load it at the very beginning. But it's there for a purpose. It's important that we see this, and it's important that we, of all the characters who gets a spotlight, that the geek, so to speak.
It becomes more important than
Yeah.
and they do focus a lot on this character, and you're like, what? Let's just move on here.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stanton leaves without paying and runs into, he's kind of in the backstage of the carnival, and who does he run into?
Runs into the wonderful Ron Perlman. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's like, what are you doing back here? And then he's like, hey, do you want a job? Do you need money? Do you need food? And so Stanton's basically kind of taken in by this group. And, he gets paid to help move the...
Yeah, schlepping stuff around.
Yeah,
Yes, for a movie this long, the film is brisk. Like it's a quick series. Like I'd even call it a montage. A quick series of scenes showing him he's becoming handy, he's becoming helpful. But we should also point out at this point, Bradley Cooper, the star of this film, 10 minutes in, no dialogue. We're just watching the character adapt to this situation.
Mm-hmm. He eventually makes his way to the bathhouse, and this is where we meet
Toni Collette's character,
Xena, and her husband, Pete.
Played by the wonderful David Strathairn. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because he's watching these guys just like wash their faces in barrels of water going, that's kind of nasty. And it says there's only 10 cents for a bath. So he heads over to Xena's.
Although, as we pointed out, 10 cents at this point in time, that's
yeah. So he got paid $1 to help move the fair. And that is a equivalent of about $15-16 today.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, $1 was a lot of money back then.
I mean, it's about a nickel to see a movie at the Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
So he could go see 2 Chaplin films or take a bath.
So
I would see 2 Chaplin films, by the way. I don't care about bathing during the Great Depression. I want to see Chaplin.
So he's like, can I get a bath? And so he gets a bath from her, and she, comes on to him
quite quickly.
Right away.
But I mean, for one thing, it's not exactly a full frontal nude scene, but it is, it is the shirtless Bradley Cooper scene. It's not quite on the equivalent of to like use the Cooper score. Like the 10 would be his scene in the 18, which you have not seen, where Jessica Biel is ogling at him, and you're like, yeah, we get it. So it's not quite on that level, folks. But I mean, I'd say it's at least a 7 on the Cooper scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, you're easy on the eyes, and
We're going, yep.
Yep, and she just gets right to it.
There's some curious splashing sounds.
Yes.
Yeah, which is all we need to know. And I thought that's enough.
Handling of things.
That's all we need. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Stanton he gets involved in this world, and it gets weird right away. I mean, the geek escapes.
Yeah.
And Clem is telling him, like, go into the fun house, and if you see him, like, send him through, and we'll get him on the other side.
And this is where you said, are you sure this isn't a horror movie?
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's not a horror film.
Gosh.
Yeah, I love this. Well, for one thing, I want to point this out because this is something I haven't pointed out in any other thing that I spoke about in this movie. Cooper, oddly enough, at the beginning of this movie, looks exactly like Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
He's dressed
totally.
just like Indiana Jones. Like, everyone made a big point about Chris Pratt looking like Indiana Jones in Jurassic World. But no, I mean, minus the whip and the gun, Cooper looks exactly like he's in Harrison Ford's old attire. And as you pointed out, and I completely agree, yes, if anybody's going to be recast, I completely welcome it. If anything, he looks like he's born to the part. But obviously, that's not what he's playing. But what's interesting about this scene is, for one thing, we finally hear this character speak, and he has a very distinct Oklahoma accent. And he is a brute. He finds the geek, and he gives him a bit of a beating. It's interesting because...
Yeah, and Clem's like, don't kill him.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is our protagonist. It's played by this actor we all love who looks great, but the character is not nice. And he's not even really an inviting character. We're watching him out of fascination and because he's the protagonist, and we're watching him, but it's not because he's a sweetheart. Right away,
Right.
We'll get into it more, but obviously the film noir stuff is all over this. I mean, right away. I mean,
and this is my problem with film noir is I found myself wanting to root for him throughout the movie, and then I go, oh, wait, no, what are you doing? I kept stopping myself.
Film noir, I mean, if anything defines it the most, not only the visual approach to it, film noirs have an unreliable protagonist. I love this. These are characters, I mean, in most cases, film noir protagonists are alcoholics. They're usually detectives who have a bottle of scotch hidden away in their desk. They are haunted by the past. They're haunted by the mistakes of their past. They are violent. They are brutes. They are, they're in dire need of redemption. And I mean, I'm basically just described characters to maybe 100 movies, and that's exactly who Stanton Carlisle is.
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's a lot of imagery, when he goes into the fun house, there's all the, like the 7 deadly sins up on the wall. There's just a lot of overt biblical imagery, or just references, and it's not heavy-handed per se, because this is the fun house, and this is it's supposed to give you the sense that whatever, you're in one of Dante's levels of hell or something, so there's monsters or giant cardboard demons, if you will, but it is this idea of there's a mirror. It's like look in the mirror, sinner. So it's one of the things that's recurring throughout the entire film. It's established that this is a world that has a morality to it. This is a moral universe full of characters who have no moral compass, starting with our protagonist. Yeah. So this film tends to focus on this geek character a lot. He's in a cage, and you keep hearing him say things like, "I'm not like this.
Yeah,
I'm
which
not
is
like
so
that."
horrifying.
It's so sad,
so heartbreaking. Yeah.
And Stanton ends up just having like a bed not too far away from this
Very
guy.
close to him, uncomfortably close.
Yeah, uncomfortably close.
Yeah.
And, he's learning the ways of this carnival.
There's a scene where he actually gives the geek a cigarette.
Yeah, he does. In one like show of humanity. But
we're constantly going back to this character who's I mean, we don't know at first we don't know what the deal is. We just see that this is a human being who is living in a state of debasement, just like
Yeah.
this is as awful as it gets.
And then Clem is kind of showing him around. He says, here's the alcohol that you can drink. It's 10 cents. Here's the alcohol that you put the wood. It's called wood alcohol. And this is what you basically put in jars to preserve things.
Yeah, formaldehyde.
Formaldehyde. There you go. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. And Clem is showing him all of his just like creatures
in a jar, which we have seen. You and I, not to talk about it too much, but you and I have been to a freak show.
Not like this.
Not like this. I mean, this was in the last 20 or so years.
There were no geeks there.
There were no geeks, but we did see, bodies in I think, did they have babies in a jar? I think they were fake UFO alien babies.
Fake UFO.
Or so we think, in a jar.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like little baby extraterrestrials.
Like a cow with two heads. It was alive.
It was extremely creepy and eerie. And there was a barker there who was like, "You leave that." No, what did he say?
No. I said.
You said, yeah.
I said, "Wow, this is so sad." And he's like, "Well, would you prefer they die? I'm the one who keeps these animals alive." I was like, "I'm sorry. I offended you, sir."
And one day Willem Dafoe will play me in a movie. That's exactly what it was like.
It was. I was like, let's get out of here.
Carnies are scary.
Yeah, this guy was not happy with me. So, moving on. So Clem is giving Stan just kind of the rundown of things.
And shows him, we should mention, I'm sorry, he shows him, because it winds up being a key visual that the movie repeats and returns to, not just
the baby.
Yeah, the baby. Yeah, not just the geek, but in a jar is this baby that was born with what's either literally or just looks like a third eye that's protruding from his skull. We established. Clem tells this horrific story about how it was a terrible birth.
It killed its mom.
Yeah, only lived for a little while.
Yeah,
and
then
so,
it died.
Yeah, this dead baby is in a jar.
That they named Enoch.
Enoch, right, a biblical reference.
And that his eye follows you no matter
like a
where
painting.
you are. Yeah, like a painting. So this creepy baby
in a jar.
In a jar.
But it's yet another thing. It's yet another. Like when I tell my students, one of the things I always say to look for when you're watching film noir is a ceiling fan. You go, why a ceiling fan? Well, a lot of film noirs have scenes that take place in skeezy, sleazy hotel rooms, and a lot of them, motel rooms rather, and a lot of them have these point of view shots looking down from the perspective of the ceiling fan. Why? It's like the eye of God. It's like a force, either spiritual or unspiritual, judging, watching. And that's what this eye, in some way, is like for Stanton Carlyle. This eye is constantly keeping an eye on him.
It's creepy. So, anyways, Clem is telling him, don't mess with me. Like, you pay for your alcohol, you do your job, you get food, you get a bed, like, just pay your dues around here. So he ends up joining up with Xena and Pete to help with their show.
Yeah.
And you see behind the scenes how their grift works.
Yeah.
And it was actually really interesting. So she's on stage and she's like, everyone write down your questions. And then they put it in an envelope and they put it in a basket. And so then they take the basket behind the stage. They pick up a different basket, hand it to her. She lights the letters on fire in this very dramatic display. And then down below, Pete opens up the real letters and he writes down what's on them. So then he's holding it underneath the stage and she can kind of see through this mirror apparatus. And she's doing her like hand on her temples and like, oh, the first one is someone is worried about their mother, and I sense the letter A, and is that Abigail? And then Abigail's in the audience. She's like, it's me, So she's thinking, whatever, the spirits are talking to Xena, and so people are getting this like false sense of hope, belief, that
the spirit world exists, that loved ones are there literally with them.
I think what I got from most of this movie is the grift is that their loved ones are back and they are communicating with them.
Yes.
Not that there's not a spiritual world, but that their loved ones are trying to get in touch with them. And it it keeps coming up, and it's just devastating for these people.
Yeah, it's not everybody, but many of the characters, the ones that are dead who they're trying to connect with, it's a loss that is sometimes it's their fault, or there is a very intense sense of guilt to the absence of that person. So speaking to the spirit world is a way of trying to get rid of your guilt.
Mm-hmm. So Stanton really becomes enthralled with this act.
Yeah.
And he learns from Pete and Xena that there's a method to the way that they do things. And Pete has this little book with all these codes. So they have code words that
Code numbers.
And so through a special language, one person in the act can communicate with the other person, and the audience doesn't know that they're basically giving away what's going on, that there is no magic. It's all fake.
It's a psychological grift. The scene where the three actors, Toni Collette, David Strathairn, and Bradley Cooper, are going through this, because Cooper's character, Stanton Carlisle's like, how do you do it? Do it on me. And they basically do like a miniature show on him inside of her bathhouse. Mm-hmm. This scene is when I knew I was madly, ridiculously in love with this movie.
All right. Stan, give Xena an article. Any article.
Please concentrate on this object I have in my hand, Professor. What can you tell me?
Wristwatch. Leather band. Brass, not gold. Old, worn down. Oh, but it's full of meaning. Oh, it wasn't yours originally, was it? You took it, or you stole it, didn't you? Oh, I see an older man. Oh, the boy hates him. Oh, the boy would love to be loved, but he hates that man. Oh. Death. Death and the wish of death.
He loved that watch. That was his pride, my father.
Was it now? No, that's it. That's it. That's it.
It's a long scene. The film kind of stops, and we're just watching these performers show this young buck their tricks. And on the one hand, it's a pivotal scene because we're learning how this grift works. We're learning the way, that you could read people. And, it's not, the act is as much as about reading the audience as it is having this language. But what I love is that, we're watching a scene about performing from three brilliant performers. Mm-hmm. So we're watching a scene about actors explaining how acting works. There's this additional level about how this grift works. Because if acting is about manipulating character and manipulating an audience to believe in the character, we're also getting a scene of characters explaining how you can create the impossible in a very simple way, in a 1930s analog way, make people believe in the impossible in a really remarkably psychologically adept way. I love this scene. This is the scene that made me really fall in love with David Strathairn's character, who, as we established, he's tortured, he's haunted, he's an alcoholic, he's essentially doomed, and same with Xena, to kind of rot with the rest of the carnies. Whereas Stanton looks at them and sees this is an opportunity, this is a gift that I can use that they are no longer all that sharp at.
Yeah, and the thing about Pete is that he says something about Stan's father.
Yeah.
And this is where you get a window into Stan's life. You're like, oh, he does have like a father issue going on. And then when Pete describes what he's doing, he's like, everyone's got a daddy or mommy issue, and just kind of like brushes over it, when you could see on Stanton's face, like, oh no, I thought that was real.
Yeah, it's great. And having seen my second time seeing the film, I realized, like, oh, this scene is actually a much bigger clue than I realized in terms of what's going on with Stanton Carlisle, why those flashbacks are important. Didn't occur to me, but that scene, I think, gives us the biggest window to what the big reveal at the end is.
Now, there's another character, the woman that Stan is pining over.
Played by Rooney Mara.
Molly, I think is her name.
I think so, too. Yeah.
So Molly's kind of quiet and just kind of, very observant. And Stan is always trying to, like, see her or impress her. She has a cool act where she, like, electrocutes herself.
Yeah.
Like, is she literally electrocuting herself?
Yes, as we learn later on from her monologue, that she literally has to...
So I thought this was just
an illusion.
for show, like it was an illusion.
Like Tesla coil.
Yeah. I did not know she was actually...
Yeah, we learned later on she had to develop a tolerance to be hit by electrical bolts. Yeah.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy. So he shows her, like, he sees her act, and then he comes up with a way to make it more dramatic. And, we find out that he draws in this notebook of his. And
he's a great caricaturist.
Yeah, very talented. And so he's like, hey, we could make this chair. It could be like an electric chair, and we do this whole thing. I mean, he makes her act
spectacular.
Yeah, 10 times better. So that's kind of where I don't know if he endears himself to her.
I think he does. I mean, for one thing, they're smitten with each other. It's unspoken initially, but yeah, they're smitten with each other, and he does make her like one of the big attractions because of the way he spiffs up her pretty moldy act.
Yeah. And then the geek ends up needing to be taken to the doctor. Is that what happens? He
was the scene that you're talking about where the sheriff shows up?
No, before that. Or maybe it's after that. But
I think it's after. Well, yeah, I'm trying to remember the series of events. I think the scene with the sheriff is next.
Okay.
That's the one where either way, I mean, whatever the order is, at one point Stanton does this grift on the sheriff who the local authorities got tipped off that the geek show was happening, and they're like,
and it's illegal.
Yeah, it's a human rights violation.
Yeah.
So he shows up looking for it. They hide the geek, and Stanton, really taking a cue from what he's seen and learned, he's able to read the sheriff really well, and basically, I mean, just talk his way completely out of that situation.
Well, pretend that his mom showed up and is talking to the sheriff, and he says, your mom is so proud of you, and she's here with you right now. And it's just like,
he's able to do it basically because he looks at his shoes and he gets a sense of who that character is.
Yeah, he explains all of the tells and how he figures out who this sheriff is, but he gets the cops off the back of this carnival, but by doing it, he realizes, I have this gift now.
Yeah.
I want to do this for real.
And he's the head of the carnies. But yeah, I think not long after that, Clem needs him to take care of the geek, and it winds up being this horrific moment where they drop the geek off just randomly at this hospital door. I think it's a hospital, and there's a neon sign that says Jesus Saves, and the sign flutters and it just says Us Saves. I'm like, okay, that's another indication of the morality of these characters. It's characters in survivalist Darwinian mode. These are not characters with a sense of empathy, a sense of any kind of spiritual focus. So they drop the geek off and they make a run for it. And I think this is the dinner scene where Clem is explaining to and it's a very important scene, explaining to Stanton exactly how one acquires a geek for a carnival show.
Yes. So this was, oh man, because I actually
You thought they were just actors, right?
No, I mean, when you see the show in the beginning and he's talking about, is it a man? Is it a beast? I mean, you kind of think, oh, all right, maybe this person, this geek is
A classically trained actor.
no,
This is my time to shine. My mother will be so proud of me.
no, not a classically trained actor, but not
I
this,
never break character.
not as
And bite the
tragic.
chicken's head off.
not as tragic as what we learn.
How do you ever get a guy to geek?
Oh, I ain't gonna crap you up. It ain't easy. You gotta pick up a broken drunk, a real alky, a 2-bottle-a-day full seat.
Pick him up from where?
Nightmare alleys, train tracks, flap houses, you name it. A lot of folks came back from the war addicted to the poppy, to booze. Now, opium really sinks its claws, but you reel them in with booze. You tell them, I got a little job for you. It's a temporary job. Make sure you emphasize that. Just temporary until we get ourselves another geek. You spike it with that opium tincture. 1 drop per bottle. That's all. But now, this is what he thinks is heaven. So, you say to him like this, you say to him, well, I gotta get me a real geek. He says, ain't I doing okay? You say, like crap, you're doing okay. You can't draw a real crowd faking a geek, you're through. And you walk off. Now, that night, you drag out the lecture, you lay it on thick. All the while you're talking, he's thinking about sobering up, getting the crawling shakes, the screaming, the terrors. You give him time to think that over while you're talking. Then you throw him the chicken. He'll geek.
You know, these guys just become so crazy because they're being starved and given drinks and drugs that he's like, and then they just geek out.
The detail that bothers me so much is that Clem gets him because he threatens to take away all that they have. It's like, you're not a real geek. I mean, how awful is that?
Yeah.
This is the only thing they have at this point, this title, this role, this job, this slight level of importance in this carnival, and he threatens to take it away. And that's the thing that grabs him. It's like, oh, this is all I have.
This is all I have, so I'm going to do it the best I can, which is horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Stanton is just, I think he's horrified by this.
Yeah, I think
right?
so. Yeah.
I mean, the audience is, definitely horrified.
And to the movie's credit, I mean, the rule of cinema typically, and Del Toro knows this as well as anybody, is, show, don't tell. And this is Willem Dafoe giving a monologue. And not only is Dafoe killing it like every actor in this movie, but the scene grabs us, even though we don't see any of this. And you know what? I don't want to see it. And I'm glad we don't see it.
We already saw at the beginning. That's
I'm
all
glad
we needed.
that we are eavesdropping on this conversation, and we are, and as enraptured and as disgusted as Bradley Cooper's character.
Yeah. Well, we get to see some of it. I mean, we see the ending of what it turns into with the show.
We see enough of the geek, but the character is.
But then we see it at the end of the movie, how it starts.
It goes full circle.
It becomes full circle.
The film, we'll get to it. The film does circle back to this character, but the character looms very large in this film. But I think there's just enough of him without it being overdone, without the movie, being very blatant about why this character is important.
Right. So before we move on to the second act, I wanted to mention that Xena and Pete, they warn Stanton. They say, don't do a spook show.
Yeah.
Which basically means, don't
get carried away.
Don't get carried away. Don't get too personal with your audience. Don't tell them things about loved ones.
Give them false hope.
Yeah, give them false hope. Make them think that loved ones are there, that they're actually talking to them. Getting too carried away. So he does get a pretty big warning at the end. Oh, and then Pete's character, Stanton asks Pete to train him, and so I guess Pete becomes like a second father figure.
Yes,
but he's also an alcoholic, and Stanton really wants this book of secrets.
Yes.
You know, that's established.
And initially, Pete is reluctant to give it to him, but he also recognizes not only that Stanton is the son that he never had, essentially,
and he has the talent.
he definitely has the gift, and he's really working at it, and he's and it seems like Stanton, again, a very there's a lot of unspoken but very tragic things in this film. Stanton is the only guy who's listening to this guy.
Right.
Pete is such a laughingstock. He's a joke. He's this washed out alcoholic. He's barely functional in his own act. So the fact that Stanton is like this starry eyed audience for Pete it's one of the things that keeps him going.
Yeah. So Pete tells Stanton, like, hey, go get me some alcohol, and Stanton gets him a bottle of the wrong one, right?
Do we know that for certain, though? I think the movie is not saying it explicitly, but I think it's suggesting it.
Okay, this movie is suggesting it. I did a little research.
Okay. Here we go. What did Google tell you?
And I think in the book and in the original movie, he apologizes for making a mistake.
So it's explicit about it. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So in this movie, he doesn't say that he made a mistake. He doesn't say that he did it on purpose. He just kind of lets everyone believe what they want to believe. That Pete finally did it to himself. This was the last bottle of alcohol he was ever going to drink. And
in full disclosure, by the way, I've not read the novel this movie's based on, unlike my friend, movie critic Greg Turner, who's read everything, including the novel. And I have seen the Tyrone Power 1947 film, I think, once. I thought it was quite good, but I forgot about it. It was a long time ago that I saw it. I liked it, but it hasn't... Not because it's a bad film. I've seen so many movies. It just didn't stay with me for whatever reason.
Yep.
So, yeah, even watching this film in the theater, I'm like, this is kind of familiar. And it wasn't until later on, like, one of the movie critics I saw it was like, this is a remake. Like, oh, no, I forgot about the original film. So,
well, I tend to
now
think...
you're all up on...
Okay,
yeah.
Well, I think he did it on purpose because he wanted to get the book away from Pete. And I think it was for purely... just selfish reasons.
Do you think he's also trying to put Pete out of his misery? I think there's that too.
No, I don't.
You don't think? You think it is strictly just?
Yeah, because
let's get rid of this old guy.
I think he's thinking, if I can get this book and I can memorize all of these pages of codes, I could have the most amazing act, because he keeps telling Molly, like, let's get out of here. I can make you big. I can take care of you. We can have our own show somewhere. And so I think he is just very...
This guy's eyeing the prize.
Yeah, he's got his eye on the prize.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I think
that's interesting, because having seen it, and I was seeing it a second time, I did get maybe an idea of different ideas, obviously, and one of which could be that it's a mercy killing. It's not, I don't see Stanton strictly as an opportunist yet. I think he gets there. I think there is a semblance of a soul, but you think...
Yeah, because I think the foreshadowing is Clem telling Stanton about the two types of alcohol that he puts right next to each other.
Right.
Like, if you really wanted to keep people safe, you would put the wood alcohol far away from the moonshine.
Right. At least have that conversation. Wait, your left or my left?
Yeah.
Like, wait, where does the line start? Like the red bottles, the green. Yeah. I would be very specific about it.
I mean, he's specific about it, but at the same time, like, okay, it's dark. Someone's stumbling around. I mean,
you have an alcoholic who's known to just stumble around.
Yeah. I don't know. And so he goes and he puts a dime on the shelf and takes a bottle. Well, okay, like, that's a quote easy mistake to make.
Yeah.
And no one would know,
Do you think that Xena suspects?
No, I don't think she suspects. But she's devastated, when she finds out Pete dies. And it's not long after that Stanton and Molly take off for bigger and better things in the city.
Yeah, and I like the way you put it, by the way. I mean, we get into this second act, and it's a different film. It's 2 years later. A lot has changed. At this point, Molly and especially Stanton Carlyle are very different characters. They are pros. They are entertainers. They're doing quite well. They have a nightclub act.
They have a residency.
Yeah.
At the hotel.
They're like Siegfried and Roy.
Yeah. Because I was like, why do they live in a hotel? I'm like, oh, that's because they do nightly shows there.
Yeah.
And the hotel was like, here, you live here. That's part of what how we're going to pay you. And then downstairs they do 2 shows a night and they have an audience.
Yeah.
And right away you see that, oh man, Stanton is not
He has not
patient.
taken the advice of not making it personal.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's not specifically spoken of, but I feel the movie is making the suggestion that he's becoming a false prophet, essentially, because this is a movie that lives in a world that's clearly defined. This is good and evil exists in this world. The sense of God and the devil, heaven and hell, the righteous path, the unrighteous path. It's very explicit in this film, and Stanton is saying, well, no, I know what I can do. I have this talent. I don't care about the fires of hell. I care about fame and fortune
Making
and
money.
my talent, my ability.
Yeah.
Look at what I can do. He becomes incredibly narcissistic and certainly overly confident in his ability, as good as it is. But we see, this is the beginning of him testing it far beyond as much as he should.
Mm-hmm. And he's really, you can see he's taken an attitude with Molly, and he's like, you messed it up, and I'm the one who turned this show around.
Right.
And if she doesn't give him the right clue, because she's still, even 2 years later, they're still perfecting the codes.
Yeah.
Like there's never any downtime for her. She's always trying to make sure she gets it right.
And it's a good point. He has made her the Vanna White of this. He's Pat Sajak. She's Vanna. You stay over there. You do the numbers. You are not the star of this show. I've got the shiny headpiece. I'm the center, literally the center of the stage. She's to the side. She's turning the numbers. She's
Working
smiling.
the audience. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then we see, this is where we now meet.
Cate Blanchett's character.
Mm-hmm. So she's in the audience and for one of the shows, and she can tell that this is a grift. She's like reading the signs. And so one of the things, so this is how they do it. Molly, picks someone from the audience and says, give me an object. And so that person hands her an object. And so she uses the verbal cues to tell Stanton what the object is, what it looks like, what it feels like, if there's an engraving, anything. And so then, he's got his blindfold on and he guesses the object and what its meaning and significance is, and then everyone's like, oh, he's so amazing. So Cate Blanchett's character, she stands up to have Molly, pick her, and she goes, no, I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold the object. And she keeps it in her purse. So there's nothing Molly can do. And Stanton takes his blindfold off and he's looking at her, and to his credit, he keeps his cool and guesses exactly what is in her purse.
To the point, it's the gold-plated gun. Yeah,
Yeah,
he knows
nickel-plated.
Nickel-plated, excuse me,
Yes.
nickel-plated, yeah.
So then what happens? She says something to him and he won't let it go. He takes it to the next level with her.
Yeah, we see that he's clearly doing exactly what he was told not to do.
Yeah, and
he's taking it very far.
I mean, he's like, what, you're an only child and you have so much to prove. I mean, he's humiliating
Tearing
her
her apart.
in front of this whole
This
like
audience, yeah.
And then that sets this one scene, like, sets the tone for the next little bit.
Yeah, because the rest of the film is basically Stanton topping this over and over again. It's almost this addiction to this ability, to how far he can take it. His belief in himself, as dumb and as unproven, and untested rather, as it is, that he can keep delivering.
Yeah. So one of her, so we find out her name is Dr. Lilith something.
And you meet the boy, did the alarm bells go off with you?
Okay, so I was like, her name's Lilith? I'm like, oh, that's not good.
And I think, well, that's the name of Bebe Neuwirth's character in Cheers. No big deal.
No.
Yeah, and you were like, no.
No, I don't remember exactly what I had seen to make me have the alarm bells go off. I just knew that it had like a negative connotation. So I'm like, okay, she's bad news. But she tricked me. She also tricked me. I knew she was bad news, but then she played this part so well as this femme fatale that I didn't know.
Yeah, and you're speaking not only to Cate Blanchett's brilliant performance, but also to the character is playing a character.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of she's a femme fatale, so it's duplicity. The
Yeah.
femme fatale traditionally is a character who is defined by her ability to use sex as a weapon, not a occupation or a pastime or a hobby, but actually the promise of sex, the threat of sex, as a pastime and as a weapon rather. And femme fatales are also defined by their intelligence. They are typically the ones pulling the strings, typically the one who is standing outside of everything, typically the one who is going to get from point A to point B, whereas the unreliable protagonist is going to wallow at some point. At some point, he's going to screw up because he is unreliable, because he is who he is.
Yeah, and he thinks he has it all under control.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing he thinks he has under control is now there is a man who wants to have a private reading with him. And he goes to Dr. Lilith and says, like, listen, you give me information about these wealthy, important people because, you know, you're a doctor and you're probably...
These are your clients.
These are all
and
your
you
clients.
know who they
yeah.
are. You know their secrets.
I go and do the grift, we split the money. So he's thinking this will be easy. Well, Lilith isn't going to make it easy on him. And she's like, I don't want your money. I want the truth. So she records a session with him. She starts recording.
It is very Silence of the Lambs, very quid pro quo. You know, in the same way, Clarice Starling wants the truth, and Dr. Lecter wants personal, painful, humiliating information about her past.
That's true.
It's a similar sort of thing. It's like, well, I want your vulnerability. I want transparency. I want the things about you that hurt. I want to make you hurt, and I want to see your hurt. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Stanton is able to perform for this man and his wife,
Yeah.
and
The wife is played by Mary Steenburgen, by the way.
Yeah. So he thinks he's bringing them closure because their son died young.
Yeah.
And he tells them, oh, your son says he's going to see you on the other side. Like,
Yeah.
you'll be together again, when the time comes. And he thinks, he gets paid a lot of money. And he brings it back to Lilith and says, like, all right, you get half. And she's like, I don't want your money. And like, oh, well, can I keep it in your safe? I don't want Molly to know.
Doctor.
Mr. Carlisle. What's that?
Your half. That's a split, 50-50.
Not interested. I got what I wanted.
But you should have seen him. My God. I think they'll be talking about that the rest of his life. I think every time they tell it, it'll just get better and better, bigger and bigger.
Toast then to your success.
He asked me to see one of his friends.
Who might that be?
He didn't say, but I'm considering it. I'll tell you what, you got a safe?
I do.
You should keep this for me. I don't want Molly to know about it anyway. Why don't you keep it for a few days? If you change your mind, we'll split it 50-50. And if not, I'll keep it.
You barely know me.
Oh, I know you well. I know you're no good. And I know that because neither am I.
Is that so?
Yeah.
So they have this whole thing going on. And are they still doing sessions together? I
Yeah.
think she's still recording
Yeah.
him. And then now there's a bigger fish, played by
Richard Jenkins. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Richard Jenkins enters the film as a character who he's been recommended by the judge, whose wife is Mary Steenburgen, and it's an interesting build up to the scene because initially we get the sense, okay, this guy has, as you pointed out, he has a mansion that looks like a prison, which I think is intentional, and Stanton is brought to this extravagant place, and we meet this millionaire character, whatever, played by Jenkins, and instead of it being a session, Jenkins, it's something of a trap for Carlisle. He absolutely doesn't insist, he enforces him to undergo a lie detector test, and Stanton turns it upside down.
Yeah.
Brilliantly, because clearly he can't withstand a lie detector test. So he basically goes into full performance mode and winds up talking his way out of it.
Yeah. And so then the Jenkins character is like, how would he know that if he's not real? You know, so this then gives him a false sense of hope, and he tells Lilith, like, okay, I got out of this one, but I'm going to need more from you. And she tells him, don't mess with this guy. This guy is bad news, and you can't get the information from me. I'm the only one who knows, so he's going to trace it back to me, and then I'm going to, he could kill me. So he sneaks, I don't know how he sneaks into her office, but he has
a key, yeah.
Well, he makes a key to her recordings and somehow gets into her office again and listens to all of this guy's sessions. So and then he does extensive research, newspapers, he's going to libraries.
It's the stuff that I normally love in movies made before the internet, where you've got the microfiche, like, ooh, they're going.
Was like even before
that. Yeah, this is before the high tech technology of microfiche. Yeah, so he's, he is looking through old newspapers. He's looking through files and records. It's as I say, like, somehow, this is pre-internet detective work.
I think he even gets into like a special box at a bank or something.
He talks his way in there. Yep.
I don't know how he gets a hold of this stuff, but
he's Stanton Carlisle.
Yeah, he finds out that Jenkins, I can't remember his character name.
It's Jenkins.
He finds out he has a lost love that died. And in my research, I think she was a mistress that got pregnant. Yeah. And then he forced her to have an abortion, and then she died. So,
and that much is implied, not explicitly, but it's implied in the dialogue.
Yeah, I didn't put all of those pieces together because these, it's like one little sentence.
There is a lot going on in this film.
Yeah, and then you're like, wait, what happened? Somebody died? How'd she die? I don't know. So that's how. And he's tortured by this memory, this... the
Jenkins character it cannot move on. He's haunted by the death of this woman, the death of a child. There's more to the character that we learn, but at this point he seems like a very haunted, kind of a William Randolph Hearst sort of character.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or Rockefeller or whatever. Yeah, somebody of that ilk.
And I think the big thing was, he tells Stanton, I need closure. Yeah. And he's like, look, I can't promise that. What do you think, money can buy you that? And he's like, oh, I know it can. So you're like, okay, you are dealing with people that you can't control now. He's already in too deep. And he gives him $10,000, which was the equivalent of like $250,000
in today's money.
Julia looked it up. I did a lot of Googling during the movie because I was very curious. Like, how much money is that back then? So he's raking in the dough. He's keeping it in Lilith's safe, and all the while Molly is just fading away from him. She's just a shell of who she once was, and they don't really have a relationship anymore.
Apparently she grew up as a carney. So there is a simplicity, there's a very simple and even innocent way that she entertains and fakes out her audience. And this is completely, it's a total,
Is this just like
violation?
This is a violation.
Yeah, violation is what I'm looking for. This is a total violation to what the kind of entertainer that she is. So Stanton is becoming a complete stranger to her, also because he obviously is having some kind of extracurricular relationship with the Kate Blanchett character.
Yeah, exactly. So the big finale of this part of the film is the Richard Jenkins character wants to see
He wants his love to materialize.
Yeah, Dory. He wants to see Dory's ghost.
As an apparition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, you can't really like force that, but Stanton has a plan. He has a picture of her, and Molly
Kind of looks like her.
kind of
Kinda
looks
the
like
dead
her.
girlfriend,
Yeah. He's like, all you have to do is wear this dress. You know, put some blood, fake blood on your hands. This is how you stand. You know, he has it all mapped out, and then that's the end of it. I make him go on his knees, say a prayer, blah, 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 you're done. And she's like, I can't do this. This is crazy.
She's speaking as the audience surrogate at this point. I mean, for me, the suspense at this point is so unbearable because this is such an insane grift.
It's such an insane
This
idea.
is, I mean, like, whatever. Danny Ocean, Ethan Hunt, they couldn't pull this off. This is insane. This is crazy. So
well,
it's like,
I mean, maybe they could with today's technology,
Sure.
but not back then.
yeah, I mean, this is some David Copperfield stuff. This
Yeah.
is like making the Statue of Liberty disappear. This
Yeah.
is bananas. And, you know, this is what this billionaire wants him to ultimately, to not only really to prove to himself that he's the real deal, but also to have the catharsis, the insane catharsis that he's looking for, to actually see her again. It's so crazy. And the fact that Stanton's like, okay, I can figure this out. It's the thing that makes the character endearing to me. It's like, man, the showmanship, the chutzpah of this guy just knows no bounds. But it's also clearly like, this is what's wrong with this guy because, you know, he's so out of his depth, and he's, you know, obviously completely unaware of it and doesn't care at all that, you know, that if
Yeah.
you fail, you're going to fail very big.
Yeah, he doesn't think of the consequences
Right.
of failing.
Yeah.
So Molly leaves him. She's like, I'm not doing this. Leaves a note. She's like, I'm out of here.
Do you think he's also do you think he's also addicted to the power that this
Oh,
gives
yeah.
him? Addicted to
Oh, yeah.
his ability to manipulate people this way?
Well, because I think he was a nobody or felt like a nobody
Sure.
before.
Yeah.
And so now he's like, look at me. I'm successful. I am wealthy. People come and pay me big money for this gift that I have. Even though the gift is in his mind, he's not really a psychic or this is a trick. You know, he's not really doing this stuff.
Yeah.
But he's just making people believe that he is. And I think it is that it has become an addiction.
It's that performance high, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he goes and he finds Molly at the
Train station.
But,
He
yeah.
runs after her because she writes him a very, very understandable note, like, okay, like, I'm out of here. This is ridiculous.
yeah.
Bye. I'm going back to the carnival where it's safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going back with the carnies who love me and respect me.
Yeah, I'm going to sleep next to the geek because it's a safer place than being anywhere near you, you freak. Yeah.
Yeah, because she also had seen that he drew a sketch of Lilith in his book.
Yeah, there's a scene that we don't necessarily have to talk about, though. I know it's a turning point. I love the visual that it presents. It's the scene where she's visited briefly by members of the carnival.
Oh, yeah.
I love the scene because it's the thing that you pointed out too. I mean, just that it's introduced by a rabbit awaiting him in the hallway, and it's like the visual of like his past, you know, intruding upon his present life. So it's this great pull in of Bradley Cooper walking down this hallway, and this beautiful white hair just like sitting there, like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Molly invites Xena.
Yeah, the circus
and-
folk.
Yeah.
And Xena does a tarot card reading and as could be expected, gives him a reading that goes, oh no, you're doomed.
Yeah,
It's over.
She's like, you have a choice to make, and if you keep down this path, this is the end for you.
Yeah.
And he very just
The great trick.
pridefully
Yeah.
is like, nope, don't care.
Yeah.
So somehow he gets Molly to agree
Yeah.
to do this final thing with
She
him.
she loves him. She senses his desperation. But the way the build up to it establishes, like, she's clearly thinking, like, as soon as this is
It's over, I'm
this
done.
is it, because
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I love him. I'm doing it because he's desperate. and because if I don't help him, he's probably going to get killed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So he
But we're going to lose our residency after this.
Yeah.
No more Vegas shows for us.
So they drive up to Jenkins' house, and he's like, okay. He unlocks this gate. He's like, at 8 o'clock sharp, you walk through this gate. This is how you stand, and then I'm gonna do this, and then you walk out back in the car. We're done.
And Rooney Mara, I gotta say, because she's good in this, but like because her character is such a tender soul, she doesn't stand out like the other actors, but she does have that great monologue where she basically tells him why she knows like this is too much and this is enough, and she uses the metaphor of her learning her trick at the carnival to take the electricity to actually have it,
She said, I knew when I had enough.
Yes.
And I had to stop.
Yeah.
And she's like, and I'm telling you that I've had enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very powerful.
Yeah, it's great.
Because, she doesn't assert herself very much. And you can tell she's just, all of this stuff is just weighing on her. And then she's, at a certain point, she's like, and I'm done.
It's funny to think that she's an innocent, to think of the world that she grew up in, the people she grew up with. Her guardian is this brute played by Ron Perlman. Her godfather is Clem. She's this family of sleazy, skeezy carnival people, but there is a sense of code and dignity to that, and this is so off the track of that.
Yeah, exactly. So now Stanton is with Jenkins, and they're out in the snow and cold and
walking the elaborate grounds of his property.
Yeah, and he tells his henchman to go. He's like, maybe we should be alone.
Yeah, the henchman who's been wanting to kill Stanton Carlisle since the moment he set eyes on him.
And then this is where Jenkins kind of confesses that he has
it's great.
hurt
It's so
women
great.
and ever since this Dory situation, I think he's been raping and murdering women.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he doesn't say it explicitly, but he also doesn't say it in a way you go, oh, okay, the way I've been hurting women. So you've been disposing them.
What are you doing?
What are you referring to exactly? We basically, it's very girl with the dragon tattoo. This character is a powerful, entitled monster, and all the pathos, all the sadness that we've felt for him before completely goes out the window. And Jenkins is fantastic because as a character actor who's been around for so long and so many different kind of movies, I feel like most people know him from Step Brothers, but he's a brilliant actor. And in this scene, he just in moments, in just a few words, we go from this guy's kind of a sad rube, and go, oh no, whatever awful thing happens to him that Stanton is doing, he completely deserves. And then of course, seconds later, this is when the ruse begins, where Molly shows up, a ghost who has blood red all over her. It's a very haunting figure. And as we can expect, because Stanton's specificity of I'm going to get him to kneel. No, of course it doesn't work that way. When he charges her.
Yeah, Richard Jenkins charges her and grabs her around the waist. And then when he looks up into her face, he's like, who are you?
And, not to because Molly is clearly the righteous person in this situation. Maybe one of the only righteous figures in this entire film, but to give Stanton a little credit, she does blow it. Remember, because Jenkins comes up to her, he tackles her, and he's sobbing and stuff. And instead of just standing there and doing what she should have done, she's going, I can't do this anymore. She breaks character. She's freaking out.
You can't blame this on her. I mean,
kind of do.
No, because Stanton said, okay, what you think that if
she just stood there, just didn't say anything, I think Stanton might have been able to control the situation.
But the fact that he was able to wrap his arms around something solid and he could feel an actual body, don't you think that would be hint number one that this isn't a ghost?
I think Stanton could have talked around she materialized for you. I think he could have figured a way to make that make sense. But the fact that she's sorry, this is wrong.
No,
it's warm in the car. I'm gonna go, you guys.
Oh my gosh, she does not do that.
No, she does not.
You're terrible. No, the Richard Jenkins character looks up into her face.
Yeah.
And says, he says something. She doesn't talk before he talks.
She does. When he's when he's grabbing onto her, she's going, I don't know. I don't know exactly what she says, but it's I don't like this. It's very, it's understandable. It is understandable.
I am rolling my eyes so hard right now.
It's kind of her fault
It's not her fault. This is all Stanton's fault. Are you kidding?
But the fact, but again, like, it's a ruse, and it's a 2-person ruse, and it falls apart very quickly because, understandably, her heart's not in it because it's so wrong.
Obviously.
It's so terrible.
Yeah.
She's covered in blood. It's freezing cold. This billionaire is holding her. It's sobbing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Stanton said, I'll make him go on his knees. He won't go anywhere near you.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, if that was me, I would have freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, he is now holding on to me. Now what do I do? How do I get out of this?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's not her fault at all.
Okay, fine.
Victim blamer.
Well, for one thing, it's a movie. He's a fictional character, so who cares? The other thing is, look, to be very clear, I am kind of kidding, obviously, because the situation is so ghastly, and what she's being asked to do is so awful. I'm just saying, if she had just kept her mouth shut, played along.
No. Wrong. Okay, so then Stanton
it goes to heck. And meanwhile, the bodyguard is listening to the radio. We haven't talked about Mary Steenburgen's most memorable scene in the movie.
Gosh,
yeah, that's a shocker. Yeah. So the film is cutting back and forth. It's cutting back and forth between the conversation between Carlisle and the billionaire right before the apparition shows up. And we have a scene where Mary Steenburgen and her husband, the judge, are talking about how great it was that Stanton came here, gave us that closure.
She's like, I've just been thinking a lot about that conversation, and I can't wait to see Julian.
Yeah.
And then murder-suicide.
Quickly, she very quickly pulls out a gun, shoots her husband, and with a truly enlightened and lovely smile on her face, she takes the gun and shoots herself in the face. It's pretty freaking horrifying. Oh my God.
I gasped. I was like, oh my gosh. So this... Stanton thinks this is like this good deed that he did.
Yeah.
And he ends up being the impetus for this murder-suicide.
Yeah. And the bodyguard hears it on the radio, and he's like, well, that checks out.
No.
So
No, it's World War II just starts. That's what he hears on the radio.
I think he hears that the judge and his wife.
Oh, is that what he hears?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
World War II is upon us. Yeah. At this point.
I think there's kind of two things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes out. Okay, so Stanton kills Richard Jenkins' character.
Yeah,
beats him up.
His face in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very satisfying, by the way.
Yeah, and then they run to the car, and then the bodyguard comes out, tries to shoot them, and Stanton runs him over and kills him.
Twice. By the way, also very satisfying. And it shouldn't be that way. We should really be rooting for Stanton, against Stanton at this point. I felt it very satisfying that he killed these awful people. I really did.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really feel bad for them, but there's nobody really you're really rooting for except Molly.
No, I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for the bad guy in this case. Movies do that sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm not rooting for him. Okay.
I am honestly rooting for Stanton to get away with it, and the thing falls apart.
Yeah.
But when he kills a guy who probably has bodies of young women all over his property.
I don't feel bad for Richard Jenkins at all.
Or the bodyguard.
No, I don't feel bad for them. But so Stanton takes off and parks the car in an alley, just like...
Sets it on fire.
No. He just like...
Bashes the window. And
yeah.
Does he?
I don't think... No, he doesn't set it on fire.
Oh.
Just bashes the windows and he's like, oh, well, it'll just look like someone stole our car. And then he takes off for Lilith's office and... We don't see Molly again after that.
Yeah.
So
presumably Molly got the first car back to the
Yeah,
carnival.
I mean Molly's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is crazy. So she hopefully is starting a new life, but he goes to see Lilith and he's like,
here for the money.
I'm here for the money. Yeah, and so then I don't know how it all falls apart, but she's like, Stan, I'm in love with you. And that's when he realizes, oh my gosh, she's playing me.
Yeah.
So he opens up the bag and she has replaced all his rolls of like 20s and 100s with $1 bills. Singles, you guys. And he's just like, where's my money? I thought you didn't even want the money. And she's like, I don't want the money, but I know how much you want the money. And this is when we realize that ever since he humiliated her at that first show, that she knew she could use him to exact her revenge on the Richard Jenkins character, who scarred her, this huge nasty scar on her chest. So I think she was like, two birds, one stone with this situation. And so he starts talking and she starts recording this, like it's a session, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like we don't have a relationship. We've only ever met in this office, and you're clearly reaching levels of psychosis. I mean, she's now like, oh, you're the crazy one.
Right.
It's
great. She's totally incriminating him.
Yeah. It's like, I was like,
he's like, hello, crazy, where's my body? Yeah, it's great. He's like totally fully, like, just calm down. I don't know what you're doing. Yeah, it's great. She's using this audio recording against him, and he's just falling apart.
Yeah, he ends up trying to kill her, and she calls the security guards. They come up. He runs off. And
my favorite visual in the movie, where Bradley Cooper is running down this beautiful glossy hallway, and he's got blood all over his hands, and he's smearing the blood on the hallway as he's running off. Like, oh, that's so fantastic! I love it. I mean, this is, by the way, this is before DNA testing or CSI, so
yeah, exactly.
It's not that they're going to extract anything from the blood. I mean, it's just a visual, but it's so cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So he now has nothing, no money, nothing, and
I guess a detail. Forgive me. There's a lot to talk about here, but over the last 20 minutes or so of the film, he has taken to drinking, which is important because it's film noir, and because, as I said, so many of these protagonists, main characters, are alcoholics or recovering alcoholics, or individuals who are trying to redeem themselves, basically break themselves from the drink. And at this point in the film, Stanton, he basically starts drinking again. It's established that he didn't because it made him think of his old man, and he's now a casual drinker. And by the time he sees Lilith, even he's drunk and sloppy, and
yeah, because he says, "Oh, I don't drink because I need to be on the top of my game as a mentalist."
Yeah.
And
she takes it as a challenge because he's like, oh, you never drink. And yeah.
So now he's on the run from the authorities, and he jumps into a train and hides behind a bunch of chickens. And then that's when I looked at you and I said, oh my gosh, he's the next geek.
Yeah. It's a pretty blatant bit of foreshadowing, but yeah.
Yeah.
You even feel like the chickens are judging him at that point.
Exactly. So now he's, sitting around fires with, the hobos of the time, and he has to pay them. He gives them his father's watch, which is the only thing he owns.
Another biblical, it's like Esau selling his soul for soup. Same thing. Yeah.
And then he wanders to another carnival at one point, and he goes into the office of the main guy.
But before we get to the last scene of the film, we should also say in the flashbacks, it's established what he was running from.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we find out that his dad was a drunk and is dying, and he opens the window on a really cold, snowy day, takes his blanket from him, and lets his dad freeze to death.
And he takes his father's watch, which is one of these things that the film is always going back to, how his watch was the only thing that he had. And in a sense, stealing his father's watch was, a real way of, how we want to say, emasculating his father, or, taking away his father's power.
Yeah, so he did say in another scene that his dad couldn't keep his mom, and his mom ran away with somebody else. And I did read an article that said possibly, and I don't know if the movie alludes to this, but that other man had molested him. And so I didn't catch that. I didn't catch any clues of that. So I don't know. But in the dialogue, it just seemed like the mom abandoned them, and he never forgave his dad for that, which I think seems more likely. But then he lets his dad freeze to death.
Yeah, very cold-blooded killer.
Yeah, very sad. It's a really tragic scene.
Yeah.
That when you find out, because that's what we saw at the beginning.
Right, with minus the very important parts. We just see basically the fire and the extinguishing of the body.
Right. So now Stanton is completely just beard's grown out, hair's long, he's dirty, he's
gross.
He's gross.
And he smells like he's urinated himself, as someone points out. And he goes into this tent and this carnival, this strange carnival that we've never seen before. It's not the same one, but it looks like the owner of this carnival, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who's wonderful in this. He's got one scene and he kills it. And he's the owner of this carnival. He basically alludes that he has Clem's radio, which used to be Stanton's radio, and also Enoch. So Enoch is back. The judgmental, creepy baby eye is looking once again at Stanton in a very judgmental way, as are the chickens. And we have the last scene of the film, which ties everything up quite nicely, where Stanton sits down and basically begs for a job.
He says, "I could be a mentalist," and he's like, "No, I don't like mentalism."
Yeah, that's old. We don't do that anymore. And initially, it seems like Stanton has blown his
chance at a
job
job
interview, and he's about to walk out. And the carney puts his arm around him and says, "Hey, let's have a drink, carney to carney." Sits down and
he's like, "I might have a job for you."
Right.
And he tells him, "I need a new geek, and do you know what that is?" And Stan says yes, and he's like, "Just only temporary, just until I can find a real one." And and then he says, "You think you could do that?" And he's like, "I was born for it," and starts laughing maniacally.
Yeah.
It is so horrible.
And that's where we leave the film. That's where it ends. Yeah. Although, as I pointed out, it's what a wonderful touch by Del Toro, a ghoulish touch. But as an old-timey 30 song is playing over the end credits, visually we're seeing the end credits from the inside of the jar with Enoch. Ugh, we don't want to get close to this thing.
So nasty.
We're traveling over the crevices of his formaldehyde body. It's great.
It's so gross.
It's so gross.
So gross.
Yeah. So that's Nightmare Alley.
That's Nightmare Alley.
Yeah.
Truly nightmarish, I thought.
Yeah. Well, did you have any nightmares last night? Is that what you're saying? Or is it just so upsetting?
Yeah, it's just, I thought it was very upsetting. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. I don't care. I do and I don't. I mean, I was upset by it too. I'm a story guy. I love a good story. That's always the thing that draws me to great films. If the story is well told and I'm invested in it. This is a movie that just draws you into this world. All those early scenes established in the carnival, they have this beautiful glow to them. All the lighting fixtures look like they have like this beautiful glow. There's a shot of Stanton Carlisle he's kind of in the background, but it's like this long shot of the carnival and you see the glow of the Ferris wheel. It's a beautiful world until we learn who's in it. It's a beautiful world until we realize that the morality is just not there. There's no sense of goodness and decency. And a character who's being debased in a cage is probably a well-known secret among everyone that they share. These are bad people doing bad things for the entertainment and for also the exploitation of all the people that come in there. I find it very interesting. There was a HBO series about carnies that was on about 10 years ago that I know people really loved. This is one of the first movies I've seen about this, aside from seeing the original film and a few other movies like The Greatest Show on Earth. I do love this sort of story because there is a desperation, there's a survivalist mentality to these characters, and I love that it's a moral story, a very clear moral story about a character who can either go the way of righteousness, and that is a path that is presented to him, or he can go down the other path, which he embraces completely and totally, which is why he is a doomed character, maybe from the start. I don't think there's a bad performance in this movie. I think everybody's been cast to perfection, even down to the smallest roles. Everyone looks the part. It's one of these things where it's cast so well that you see Willem Dafoe before you hear him as the character, and you go, yeah, I understand. I know who this guy is because he's that well cast. I love Cooper in this movie. He's been great before. I know what a controversial film American Sniper is for a lot of people, but I think he's flawless in that movie. And I think that film is terrific in spite of the controversial aspects about it. I think this is another milestone for him. What a difficult character to play, not only because, you have to be endearing on some level. And I think he does pull us in, even as the character is often quite repellent. I mean, Kate Blanchett is incredible in this. Toni Collette, David Strathairn. I mean, everybody's so good in this. Richard Jenkins. I don't think there's a bad scene in it. I really don't. I feel like the movie understands this world as well as it's able to convey this world. It pulls you into a world. I don't know. I feel like Del Toro's got maybe 7 or 8 masterpieces left in him, so I'm almost hesitant to call it like, it's a masterpiece. It is, though. I do feel like it was the best film that came out last year. I love film noir. I love period pieces that are done this well. But again, I just love a good story, and I feel like even with the absence of a creature feature feel that most of his great movies have, I feel like this movie still has it because we got Enoch. We got Enoch in the jar, and we got a movie of monsters. We got movies about how awful humankind can be to each other, how we can manipulate each other, how things like joy and spirituality and fulfillment and love, all those things could be corrupted so easily. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it's an easy 5 stars. I think it's the best film of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
How many stars did you give it?
I mean, it's everything you said is true. It is a great
You
film.
can totally disagree with me, though.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying the disturbing nature of the content is more where I'm like, I don't know if I would watch it again.
Sure.
Just because it is so hard. But everything you're saying is true. I mean, the story, the characters, the acting, everything was brilliant. It's just, I think if anybody is a little bit squeamish about certain subject matters, this would be a tough one, because it doesn't give you a lot of like breaks, because the whole time I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Oh, and then I did look up the name Lilith, and it's from Judaic mythology, and the story is that Lilith was the name of Adam's first wife, who wouldn't listen to him and was cast out of Eden and then became a night demon. So she's known as a she-demon. And I was like, oh, that's why they named Kate Blanchett's character Lilith, because she doesn't play by the rules.
And it turns out Lilith's last name is Fair. Dun, dun, dun.
my
No, I'm kidding. No.
But anyways, now you know. If any characters are named Lilith, you can be like, I'm very skeptical of this character. I don't know if they're good or bad. Probably bad.
Again, I think of...
But no, she's not bad.
She's Lulu is the name of Fraser Crane's wife, I think, on Cheers and also Frasier, played by Baby Newirth. I think it was Lilith.
Okay, but I don't think Cheers.
You don't think they were considering
no.
Judaic mythology when they...
No, I don't. Do I think Guillermo del Toro was? Yes, I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
let me ask you this, because it's a well-known thing about this film. Originally, for a while anyway, it was a Leonardo DiCaprio vehicle, and DiCaprio backed out apparently to do this new Scorsese film that's coming out this fall. But DiCaprio originally was going to play Stanton Carlyle. Mm-hmm. You think that could have worked?
Yeah.
You see him in a film like this?
Sure.
No?
Yeah, I don't think it would have been much different. No offense to Bradley Cooper, but I mean, him and...
You don't think they bring a very different feel and energy to a film?
Well, I think it would have been different, but I don't think it would have been any better or worse. I don't know.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I prefer Cooper in this role. Obviously I'm looking in my mind's eye what DiCaprio would have been like. I certainly think if DiCaprio had played the role, more people would have seen this film.
Oh, yeah.
This is, as we're recording
okay,
this...
maybe it would have felt less gritty.
Less gritty?
Yeah.
Really? You think?
Yeah, because I think...
DiCaprio's made gritty films, don't you think?
I don't know, but he's got...
You're not just thinking about him, sinking on that big old boat, are you?
No.
That's not the grittiest movie he's ever made. Do you remember the one he did with Kate Winslet called Revolutionary Road? Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Which is very strong and very
Okay, well, I don't
depressing.
know what you're asking. Like, how different would it have been?
Well, for Pete's sake, Jules, I just mean how
I don't
would
know. I'm not a DiCaprio connoisseur.
What do you think if Dwayne Johnson had been cast as Stanton Carlyle?
That would have been silly.
You don't think you wouldn't have liked it how he would have read people's minds as a mentalist and he always raises his eyebrow at the camera?
No. Oh my gosh, hilarious. No, I do think that Cooper is more of a character actor and less a leading man.
And I think that works because I agree with you. I think
I don't
DiCaprio is
think
a more iconic movie
I think
star.
a leading man is not the right
I
person.
agree. Thank you. I get totally. I think a more iconic movie star takes away from, because with an iconic movie star, like it or not, we're always going to be on the side of that guy.
Yep.
I love Shutter Island. I love
Well,
his performance in it, but like that guy is a crazy loose cannon. If you'd cast a weirder actor to play it, you'd be like, oh, I don't know. Because it's DiCaprio, we're kind of rooting for him. And I think in this case...
And I did feel like I was rooting for Bradley Cooper, but there were always moments where I was like, I hate this guy.
Yeah.
You know, like what is he doing?
Which is great, because again, it's like we're reacting to the character. We're not like, it's not the safe thing of like, oh, like Matt Damon's playing him, so he can't be all bad.
Matt Damon. Just kidding. Oh, am I not supposed to say that?
Well, I don't think Matt Damon would appreciate that. You know, like Damon always impressed me because he did The Talent of Mr. Ripley. More than anything else, when he did that movie, I thought this is a real actor because this character is career suicide. This character, I mean, Mr. Ripley, the way he plays it, I mean, he's pathetic. And the whole movie is about how Jude Law is so much more spectacular than he is, you know?
Yeah.
And the character is, I mean, there's something really sad and tragic about the talent of Mr. Ripley. His only talent is that he embodies other people. So when Damon did that, I thought, I love this guy. Like anything this guy does, because, you know, you have to love acting to do a movie like that. Whereas, you know, some of the actors that we've spoken about, some movie stars, would never do a film like that. And that's why I love Cooper, because he's going after roles that are, you know, I mean, A Star is Born. You know, now we're like, you know, we're removed from it, like, well, it was a huge hit, even the soundtrack is whatever. I mean, that movie, talk about career suicide if that didn't work. I mean, a musical playing that role and your co-star is Lady Gaga. I mean, 1,000 things that could have gone wrong with that film. And it's terrific, and he's terrific. And if anything, the choices he made are, you know, one of the things that makes that movie so great. And I love him in this film because, again, it's like he is completely committed to the character. It's not... You know, it's not really a vehicle for him. It's not tailor-made for him. It's a really generous ensemble piece. He's great in the movie, but he's also, you know, like sharing the screen with these wonderful co-stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost makes you wonder why, I don't know, people like these leading man roles. They're not as interesting.
That's a good point. I mean, when you're doing a leading man role, yeah, you're right, because it's like those tend to be the roles where, I mean, you're just... there's not always a lot of depth to those characters, because if you're paying an actor 10, 15, 20, 30 million dollars, you want the audience to like you, like the way you look. There's some actors who fight against that. I think one of the more amusing anecdotes is Kevin Costner, very famously, when he was cast in The Bodyguard, he surprised everyone by coming to the set with that haircut. Because he said, you know, he saw the character as Steve McQueen and they're going, oh my God, you know, his hair in that movie is terrible. Terrible. You know, and it's great because that was a character choice that he made. And, you know, and for Costner, it was like this rebellious thing, like, haha, you know, like I'm doing this because this is going to get me.
Now no one will think I'm attractive.
Right. Whitney Houston will not be able to look at me. And you know, look, whatever you think of that movie, the film works. He works in the film. Maybe not the best example, but no, you're right. Like, if anything, all these actors in the movie, I mean, they've got so much to sink their teeth into. Even Rooney Mara, as we've said, like, she's got a lot of baggage to carry for a role that doesn't seem like she's bringing a lot, but she is. Mm-hmm. Everybody is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So normally we talk about alternative endings, but this movie comes so full circle, and with all of the like hints and everything along the way, I mean, I don't know that this screenplay could have been written any better.
I think there's a way. I mean,
Oh,
there's a
okay.
side character that he's only in the first scene of the movie, but like I feel like we needed his backstory. There's a character named Stanton. I would have liked to have seen Stanton.
Stanton?
Yeah, Stanton waddles his way over to Drake, and he's like, and Drake says, temporary. And Stanton goes, oh, and then we flash cut to him being in the Geek Show.
Oh my gosh.
So I wanted to see his backstory.
No chickens were harmed in the making of this film.
I'm sure PETA is like, we need to watch that thing again, because I don't know, Mr. Del Toro, that chicken looked kind of real.
Oh, that's awful.
This is crazy, but Del Toro, he has a movie coming out this fall, and it's going to premiere on Netflix. It's his stop motion version of Pinocchio. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, weird.
Yeah. I think this is your first film of his, because you didn't see The Shape of Water, right? Which one Best Picture?
No.
But you didn't see. Yeah, I know you haven't seen any of the Hellboy movies.
Well, I don't like monster movies.
Yeah,
so
that's his specialty.
This is not.
Yeah.
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 And you made a point of telling me this is not a horror movie like so many times.
And it's not.
It's borderline.
Well, if a horror film is simply just if a horror film is defined by our reaction to it, then yeah, it's disturbing. But I gotta say, I don't think it's an exploitive film. It's about people who exploit people, but I don't feel the movie is exploitive. I don't think the movie's misogynist. I don't feel like this movie is over the top. I do feel like there is a classiness and a restraint to this movie. I really do. I think that think about how much worse. This film could be.
The women really come out on top in this film.
Yeah, absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the guys who really eat it big time.
Yeah, and the chickens especially.
Yeah, all of them.
If you love chickens, you probably shouldn't see Nightmare Alley.
Oh my gosh.
Let that be a word of warning.
All right. Any additional thoughts?
No, I think I just said the most profound thing I'll ever say about this movie. So I need to end on top.
All right.
Especially since I screwed up the director's name at the top of this.
Oh my gosh, he's still...
Guillermo del Toro.
Wow.
I love you, Guillermo del Toro. Yes.
All right. On that note, that concludes our discussion of Nightmare Alley.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.